Moving on to Israel now, where police say they have, quote, neutralized a gunman who shot and wounded 3 people in Tel Aviv. It comes as the country deals with widespread protests against efforts by the new right-wing government to reform the judiciary. The proposed laws would reduce the powers of the Supreme Court and allow more political influence in the appointment of judges. Crowds opposing these plans blocked roads leading to Israel's main international airport. The disruption forced both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanayahu and visiting U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd to change plans. Critics of the reforms have called the proposals a threat to democracy, but supporters insist they reflect the will of the people. Now, for more on both those stories, let's bring in DW correspondent Tanya Kramer in Jerusalem. Tanya, let's start with the latest. What more can you tell us about this attack?
Well, as you said, we've said a day of mass protests, but we're just getting the reports that shortly after 9 local time here, there has been a shooting reported in the center of Tel Aviv on Dizengoff Street. That is one of the main streets with a lot of coffee shops and bars and restaurants in Tel Aviv. According to the first responders, 3 people have been injured. One of them is in critical condition, and they all have been now brought to the hospital. We don't know more at this point about the background, but there has been a shooting in Tel Aviv.
Prior to this, thousands of Israelis had come out across the country to protest against a proposed change to the judicial system. So can you tell us, up to this tragic incident, of course, how the day unfolded?
Well, I mean, it was an unprecedented day of mass protests. The organizers called it a day of resistance against the government plans to change the legal system here. If you look back like 2 months ago, it all started with a Saturday night protests, and more people, came every Saturday and morphed into almost daily protests now, also strikes during daytime. And what we've seen today, there were marches, there were ships trying to block the port in Haifa, people protesting at junctions, on bridges. We had farmers coming out with their tractors trying to slow down traffic, and of course also trying to prevent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanayahu to get to the airport, blocking the roads to the airport. And there were also some confrontations between protesters, mainly in Tel Aviv. They were blocking the main highway there, and also arrests being made by the police. Now, I've been talking to a lot of protesters in these last days, and today, there's a real sense of urgency that this government plan needs to be stopped, but also there's a lot of anger in how it is pushed through in a very, very hasty way, and a lot of people, want this to stop. So this is what they have been protesting today. And if you look also at polls and surveys, a lot of people are saying, a majority of people saying that they want this process to slow down, and that opponents and supporters, because of course there are also people who support this, the government plans, they need to find a compromise on that.
For our viewers joining us now, we are seeing live pictures of what seems to be the scene of a shooting in the center of Tel Aviv in Israel. 3 people were wounded, and it sounds like the shooter has been what the authorities call neutralized. We don't have much time anymore, Tanya, but I would like to know if these demonstrations that are quite unprecedented could be pressuring Netanyahu towards a compromise, if this is what the people of Israel really want.
Well, we haven't seen such a compromise yet. Prime Minister Netanyahu, before leaving to Italy on an official visit, he had said again that actually he's working. He wants to see a compromise, but the opponents of the opposition is saying, as long as they don't stop the process to push those bills through, there's no real negotiation going on. But we've seen tonight, once again, that's very unusual, President Isaac Herzog addressing the nation in prime time TV, he was very emotional. He's saying it needs to, both sides need to find basically a compromise on that. He said also the legislation as it is pushed through now should be actually discarded, and there should be another way, another plan that is agreed upon that should be moved forward instead.
The president, you just said it, but also the leader of the opposition and critics of this bill, of course, have been warning that this could be a death sentence for Israel's democracy. Can you tell us what the implications of this law would be?
Well, there are several laws. What we've been seeing is that basically what the government is trying to do is to curb the powers of the nation's Supreme Court. And also, for example, they're trying to push through several bills now, and some of them have passed the Knesset committee that's dealing with it. Some have been going into the first reading. So apart from curbing the powers of the Supreme Court, it's about the selection of judges. It would also probably get a bill to override Supreme Court decisions. So all of this together, makes it a very problematic and controversial judicial overhaul.
Tanya Krima, many thanks.